Milestone in the UAE for the UAE corporate taxation around the 30th of September. So I was thinking about approaching what topic to talk about, especially with the finance professionals. Of course, we don't want to make it unidimensional, wherein we are just only, focusing on one set of skills. Because in order to grow further in finance profession, one must have various other skills. We will briefly touch about that, but I thought about this one particular skill, which is emotional intelligence. As you grow in your career, this is one aspect which will be very much necessary. So, which is why I have decided on this particular topic. The agenda for the day is pretty simple. We will be talking about what emotional intelligence is and why is it so important for the finance professional. Now, just to give you a little bit of background about emotional intelligence, Daniel Goleman, who is considered as father of emotional intelligence, is not the person who coined this terminology. He basically worked a lot on in this area. His first book on emotional intelligence came in 1995, which is almost 3 decades ago. So, and prior to that, he refers to some professors from Yale University who started or coined this terminology. Now, the author of the book, Emotional Intelligence, Why It Matters More Than IQ. This is what is the title of his book. And he mentions that, emotional intelligence to him initially sounded like an oxymoron, like something which is incompatible, these two terminology, because people say when we are emotional, we just react to the situation. So he clarifies this. He says that it is about being intelligent of your emotions. So we'll discuss about what is emotional intelligence in a little bit of details and how it impacts the finance professionals. Now, we said that, there are a lot of skill set which finance professionals need. On this particular platform, previously, CA Ashid, he was presenting the evolving role of CFOs. He was mentioning about the various challenges that, the CFOs have to go through. And, this is a subject of continuous discussion. So learning and adaptability are the key. So this is the key skill. What kind of qualifications you need and you continue to grow, what exactly do you need in there? So all of this parts is part of the adaptability and learning. Then comes the strategic and analytical thinking. The psychologists basically, when they evaluate, especially the engineers, the accountants, they say that, they are more towards their analytical thinking. So, of course, by its very nature, accountants or, finance people, they are good in analytical thinking, which is why they continue with this profession. But one step ahead of that is the strategic thinking. So various strategy models are put to use, in the firms, in consultancies, wherein, to monitor the performance, some use balanced scorecard approach, some use strategy canvases, and Porter 5 forces model. Various models are put to use to come up with some strategy. Now, strategy, of course, is a big word, and certain people use it for different terminology. However, just a basic categorization of the strategy is it can be emergent strategy or it can be planned. Most of the times, this connotation is used for the planned strategy, which is mostly for the long term. So this is also important as you grow in your finance career, that to understand what the strategy has to be linked with the vision of the company. So understanding of how it basically cascades down and how you have to implement it, that is a skill that finance people should learn and implement. Then communication and networking. These are very important skills because this is one of the differentiating factors between those people who grow to become great leaders. And communication, I think it's a blessing from God that over the centuries that human beings have been able to communicate. They have made certain processes in place which allow for the transfer of the knowledge from one generation to another, which is why we are in current age of knowledge, and it is going to expand from here on. So communication is a very important element. Another skill, of course, specifically mentioned as leadership. uh, this is one vast area. Thousands of books are written on leadership. We talk about spiritual leaders, we talk about political leaders, business leaders, you name it. People talk about their traits, but the ability to take the initiative, the ability to take care of your team is or are those skills which are the trademarks for a very good leader. So what separates a good leader from bad leader? We can also talk about that, but mostly since our topic is emotional intelligence, a good leader is automatically emotionally intelligent also. And last but not the least, which is the topic of our session today, is emotional intelligence. So this is the area, as you can see, we might have heard or talked about most of the other aspects: adaptability, learning, leadership, communication, and strategy, and all that. But very rarely I find people talking about this emotional intelligence, and especially for the finance professionals. So which is why I would want to get a little deep into this area. This is a vast area. Disclaimer is that, of course, we are not psychologists, but as you grow, when you become a leader, it is important to understand the behavioral aspect of human beings, and which then allows you to interact with people in a very decent way and get the relevant outcome. Now, before I get into the definition of emotional intelligence, I would like to discuss about emotional illiteracy. What is emotional illiteracy and how much it can cost? I'll give you an analogy, and basically, I'm going to use some made up names, but this is a true story. So it just happened that in one of the finest schools, in the eighth grade, the the students who were the top performers, let's name them Ellen, Ben, Charles, and Dan. So these were the position holders. The top three, and Dan was the fourth position holder. Then comes the midterm exam, and uh, another thing about this analogy is that this happened to be one of the finest schools whose students used to take positions in the board exams. So, and these students are just about to prepare for their board exam in a couple of years. So there is a pattern that is being followed. And there is an important aspect that I would like to highlight with this story. So comes the exam day, and Dan basically prepared everything and did his best. Still, he came fourth. So in order to celebrate, he invites all of them after the school hours to the first floor, and wherein two of the first two do not show up. Only Charles showed up. And what happened is that this person, Dan, takes out his gun and shoots this guy, 6 bullets. Fortunately, he still survived. But the learning from here is that this boy, 13 years old boy, was not able to regulate his emotions particularly. And since he was not able to channel them, he decided this extreme measure to take life of another human being. And then it end up basically worsening the reputation of his school, who which was known for its excellent curriculum and teaching. However, they were lacking in developing these kind of skills for their students, which is why one of the student took such extreme measure. Now, there are cases like that out there in the market. Of course, people don't talk much about it because there are reputations at the stake, so much less is talked about. From a finance perspective, let me give you another example. There is this student who is exceptional in analytical abilities, very good in memorization of the formulas and concepts. but after the qualification enters the job market. In the job market, you have to deal with people. Previously, you were dealing with books, now you have to deal with people. So the dynamics changed here. Because this person was just not trained on the emotional aspect of how to deal with people, it struggled. And subsequent to the struggle was the burnout. And after the burnout, the person had committed suicide. There are numerous cases like that. So, without naming anybody, I'm just emphasizing the issue here, which is the cost of emotional illiteracy. So, if those people were aware of the emotions that they were going through, they were able to regulate them, and they would have consulted with somebody, it would have been a different scenario. So, in order to classify the emotional cost of illiteracy, there are personal costs, there are interpersonal costs, and there are societal costs. So, the given scenario, the given analogy that I just mentioned, there were personal costs. So, personally, of course, this student had to be, detained from the school. In the other cases, imagine the amount of embarrassment that the parents and the school had to go through. And of course, it had society costs also. So now these three costs can be further subclassified into these subcategories. So in the personal, the people might be facing certain mental health related issues. So, and then it is also linked with the healthcare burden. So, in the more developed world, where the healthcare is funded by the government, of course, it has economic impact on the government. So similarly, on a personal level, people are having less awareness about themselves. Then when they go to the workplace, they are not able to navigate the relationships in a proper manner. So it causes burnout, it causes conflict, and not being able to manage those conflicts properly, it either escalates the situation or creates friction within the existing team members, and which basically impacts the overall culture of the company. So, in order to take care of this, companies and especially the finance people, anybody can train themselves on these things. They just need to be making sure that they are more self-aware. And we will get into the emotional intelligence in the next slide. So in this particular slide, as you can see, the definition of emotional intelligence is given on the left side. Now, emotional intelligence basically is the emotions. You need to understand your own emotions and how they interrelate. Also, add to it the emotions of other people. And emotionally intelligent individual can motivate themselves, of course, and they can motivate other people. Hence, they can be better leaders. So as you can see on the right side in this particular diagram, the emotional intelligence is classified into these 5 areas. However, as per Daniel Goleman in his book, he just classifies them into 4 areas. Self-awareness, secondly, self-management. In self-management, he calls it self-regulation and self-motivation. The third one is social awareness and empathy. And the last one is relationship management. We will discuss them one by one and what are the implications for the finance professionals. Now, there is discussion about EQ versus IQ. One thing is very simple. Those people who have high EQ, they also have decent or good level of IQ. It basically, it's not like something like, if you are high on one, you cannot have the other one. But a very high level of IQ does not necessarily mean that the person will also have a very high EQ. The other side of it is that high IQ people will have high IQ as well. Now, the implication is that how do we measure the IQ? Of course, people can do the test, they will be able to understand their scores, but it's more towards your cognitive ability, your problem solving skills, reasoning, logic, it's related to that, your IQ. So, you know the answer, this kind of style. This is the approach in the IQ. Whereas in EQ, it's more of towards human connection. You should be able to understand your audience, and you should be more adaptable to that. Empathy is one which is part of the social awareness. So this is the main difference between the two. It's not that they are not able to reconcile. It's like, it's part of the human function. Both are part of the human function. Now let's take this one example between EQ versus IQ. The top one is the IQ, wherein a tax strategist basically models a complex restructuring using the advanced scenario modeling. Of course, in modeling, logics are used, business understanding is utilized, analytical thinking is used. So the outcome is that, if you are just focusing on the IQ side, is that you will make sure that, whatever information, the budget, the forecast that you are presenting are accurate. So you want to make sure that, you are compliance with the operating standard. The other aspect, let's talk about that, the EQ. So the senior finance leaders, be the CFOs or directors or the partners, they are dealing with something, at a board level, for example, wherein if you have not able to have a relationship with those people and you just go there to present the numbers, the conversation will not be that deep, firstly, and secondly, it will not allow you to come up with a storytelling. So as a CFO, one needs to maintain, firstly, they need to understand their audience there also. Like, what is the board's engagement towards the overall aspect of the business and towards the finance? And if they, for certain reason, because a lot of the time, finance people, because of the function, now the function from one organization to another organization would vary. But a lot of the time, what you will see here in the industry, that it's just a support function, not a very strategic role, which is involved into strategy formulation and execution. It's just that once the things are done, only the bills will be handed. So I'm not referring to that. I'm saying that holistically speaking, the finance role, of course, it's a broader role and it depends from one situation to another. But the finance people, they have to develop this relationship with the board and the seniors in order for them to then, uh, be persuasive in terms of what they want to achieve for the company. Of course, this will then lead to develop trust, maintain trust, and diffuse any tensions. And then you will be able to take care of the stakeholders in a better way. So another way of looking at human brain is the left and right side. Of course, on the left hemisphere is more this an analogy, or this the scientists have given this kind of diagram to just to understand which part of the brain does what. So analysis and the logic and the reasoning mathematical aspect of it is coming from the left side, and from the right side is more towards the imagination, vision, and more creative aspect. So if one combines both of them, you can live at the fullest to put your brain to the best of its use. Again, there was another myth that there are people who are either mostly using left side of the brain, or are left brain oriented or right brain oriented. This has been, of course, debunked. This myth has been debunked, that human beings with special nurture and grooming, if let's say they were more towards left side of the brain, they can develop those skills, can be developed, so that they become more creative, more solution oriented people. Now, on the screen, we are not going to understand the anatomy of the human brain. We are just going to talk about amygdala hijack. Many a times, let me explain the definition of what it is. It is a rapid, intense emotional reaction in the form of anger, fear, or panic that bypasses rational thought, and it's disproportionate. Now, once you read this book of Daniel Goleman, in case if you decide to read this book, it's a very fine read on emotional intelligence. Uh, he gives an example there based on the data that he had. And according to that data, people, especially the children at the age of or below the age of 12 who got murdered, 57% of them were murdered by their own parents. 57% in his sample, 57% of the children under the age of 12 who got murdered were murdered by their own parents. The reasoning is shocking because the parent is killing out of disciplining a child, and they went so far that they killed their own children. Now this is a very shocking, because so much time, investment, care is there for taking care of a child, for bringing a new life into this world, and then nurturing it, and then uh, because of this amygdala hijack, this is what happens. They really lose control of the exact situation. They went and took, or they take extreme measures. Now, what happens is, of course, is explained here. The thinking brain, they did not put to use. And just out of being reckless, they just commit this extreme measure. And this is one of the shocking things that, taking these extreme examples helps us understand why we need to regulate our emotions. Now, on the screen is one of my favorite quotes from this book, The Eighth Habit, from Stephen Covey. He writes on page number 42 about this, and I think he has referenced it into his one of the best-selling books, The Seven Habits of Highly Effective Teenagers. He says, in the space between stimulus and response lies our freedom to choose. Now, I would like to explain it in the form of this example. Now, stimulus is, I'll give you an example. So imagine you are driving on the road, and of course in UAE it's the left-hand drive, but and now imagine that there is a car on your right, and without giving any indicator, it just crosses you. So this is a kind of a trigger point. Now, a lot of the people, they become angry when something like this happens. So what they have the option, and the author of the book argues that as human beings we are blessed with four endowments, and he lists them, which you can see on the screen. He says if you are self-aware, then you can decide. So between a trigger, between a stimulus, and how you respond, there is a freedom to choose. You can do anything. You can get mad at that person, you can start honking your car, you can go after this person and start yelling by, going near to that person. All those things you can do. And you can also choose not to take any extreme measure. So it's just one instance which just happened. You never know what is the reason that the other person did it, whether it was reckless driving or what. But this is exactly what the author presents. He says that human beings are blessed with the freedom to choose. Whenever there is a trigger, then based on that trigger, you have to give yourself some time. If you have self-awareness and you have the ability to imagine, you will come up with various options to decide what should be the right course of action in a particular scenario. So this is also an interesting read from Stephen Covey. Now, let's zoom out a little bit. We talked about human beings, we talked about right side of the brain, left side of the brain. So let's talk about what overall is a human being. So there are various aspects of human beings. There is physical aspect, the human body. There is mental aspect of it, the IQ that we talked about is that. There is emotional side of it. Of course, that's the topic of the day. And there is a spiritual side of it. If one wants to live a very fulfilling life, all these areas should be covered. So, for example, if you are not taking due care of your body, there will be certain mental issues that you will begin to face. So maybe you are very intelligent already, but because your body, you did not take care for a long period of time, it will impact your mental health also, and it will also impact your socially, from a social point of view. So you will not be able to take care of your relatives, your other relations. And another thing is that spiritual aspect of it. If one is not taking care of the spiritual aspect, then again, one will feel certain void. So one needs to give back to the community, the likes of Nelson Mandela, uh, you know, Mother Teresa. These are good examples who have, done some great work for the human beings. We can of course talk about the history wherein the prophets came, and but again, there is a spiritual aspect of it. There is a religious aspect to it, and as a human being, of course, if all these areas are tapped in, then that is a guarantee for the fulfilling life and a satisfied life. But if you are going to ignore any of these, one will face certain void in their life. So again, this is also adapted from this particular book of Stephen Covey. Now, now that we have talked about the human being and the brain side of it, let's talk about this matrix. So basically, the conversations, the discussion do not happen in abstract. There is a context to it. Like we are attending this webinar today, we are here in a particular context. Now, on the horizontal axis that you see is low relation on the left side and high relation on the right side. And on the vertical axis, you have high information and low information. Now, a typical example of a low relation and low information can be the security guard in your building. You are not supposed to share much of information with him, and if you want, you can decide not to have good relationship or at no relationship with them whatsoever. But if you shift this, and from time to time, pass greetings to them. Maybe Diwali is coming or some other event is coming. You greet with them, maybe give them a gift. It will help you build that relationship. Similar is true, for example, with your boss or your immediate boss, you should maintain high relation, and because you have to share a lot of information with this person. Now, if for certain reason you are not able to maintain a good relationship with your boss, but yet you have to share a lot of information, mostly related with work, unless your boss is a sneaky person, you should maintain good relationship with your boss, and you should fall in this quadrant. And in case if for certain reason you are following in this quadrant, you should try and move your conversation towards the first quadrant. So I just thought that this is important from a professional perspective, because a lot of the time the discussions, the conversations that we are having are just superficial, just for the sake of having those discussions. They lack meaning, there is no depth to the discussion. And for the stakeholder management, or when you are dealing with senior leadership, it is always important to have good relationship. So we discussed earlier in one of the slides about EQ versus IQ. This is very relevant and very important. How you deal with your conversation, and these are the two spectrums, two sides that one should consider. So we just talked about that. For those people who you want to have either, or you already have your high relation, like for example with your parents or with your spouse, you have high relation and you are sharing a lot of information with them. So many a times you will find that of course due to the certain changes in the ways that the morals have been changing in these societies, and for so many other factors, the divorce rate has been increasing. But one thing is that these people have not been able to develop a very good relationship, which is why they are, divorcing each other. So if they are able to connect deeply, if they are able to connect on the values, which is the spiritual aspect of it, and the habits are aligned, so it will really help creating that good relationship. So one must try to, wherever you are in this matrix, one should try to move into the first quadrant. It's just a try, it's not true for somebody. Let's say you are going in an elevator and you are just meeting somebody. Of course, you cannot establish. Maybe you are going to look at that person only for once, and not after that. But again, if you still greet nicely with that person, it will leave an impact. So this is an interesting way of approaching life. Now, since we are living in a VUCA world, let's discuss what are the implications for the finance professional now. So VUCA world basically means volatile. We have uncertainty, there is complexity and ambiguity. There are a lot of challenges that as finance professionals we face. Economies are changing rapidly. Tariffs come and go, and actually they continue to increase based on the recent incidents that are happening. So there's a lot of volatility. So how does it impact, and how EQ will help navigate this better? So imagine there is economic downturn, and it leads to stress, and urgent decisions have to be made. So f- in the EI world, you have to manage yourself first, because if you are not able to manage yourself as a leader, then it is going to create a ripple effect. So if for certain changes in the market, you take stress yourself, you will transfer that stress to your own team. So one must be very careful, because it is contagious. Stress can be transferred. Whatever as a leader you are going to take as a situation and deal with it, if you are not dealing in a particular guided way, it will impact your team and it will create a problem. People might begin to leave because they might also be stressed out and uncertain of how the leadership is tackling the overall situation. So self-management is important, and only then you will be able to take the necessary measures. Communicating the financial risk or negative financial news to the non-financial stakeholders. Again, empathy plays a very key role. Empathy basically is the ability to understand, and you have social awareness of how the other people feel, how I must be taking care of that side. So another thing is that framing your message is very important. Now, for the people who are in the finance, in the CFA curriculum now, they have introduced these behavioral biases. They have, investor biases. Under the investor biases, they talk about some 15 biases. One of those is framing bias. So how do you frame a message is very important. Saying one thing like, this medicine or this forecast is going to be 98% accurate. Another way of saying is that it is 2% ineffective. So how do you present? If you are in a certain situation, how do you present? In difficult situation, it is very important to frame things properly, use proper wording. You do not want to put yourself into trouble by using excessive words, certain terminologies which are not needed to be used in a certain audience or certain setting. So framing bias or framing the message is, one should be careful about that. Now, balancing strict compliance controls with business growth and innovation. Again, these three aspects will kick in: the social awareness, the self-management, and empathy. Uh, Recognizing how risk aversion might slow growth. There are people and there are, businesses that for certain reasons, sales and marketing people, for example, one of their traits is that they are more optimistic towards the business. They think that they have a better business acumen because they are on the ground, they are dealing with the market people, and they have a better understanding. So from a finance perspective, if you have a growth mindset, you should understand what their concerns are and integrate those concerns in your forecast, for example, or in your budgets. Because if you only continue towards compliance, for example, let's take this example of Pillar 2. So Pillar 2 is coming, effective tax rate would be, let's say, 15%. And then, the finance people do not integrate that either, or say, that it is important to let go of certain businesses because otherwise we will cross that threshold and, this will impact the business. So this is one not very maybe good example, but this is something which I have heard, and this is practically what some people say. So get rid of businesses for compliance reason, otherwise we will be exposed to more taxation. This is not a very good understanding when it comes to having a high level of business acumen. This is a typical accountant approach, which is why people do not rate, like they use the terminology accountant in a not a very good way. So which is why it is important to have this understanding and dealing with the business heads and people, so that the finance can also inculcate those skill set and be on the same page with those people dealing with the business. Ethical dilemmas. Ethical dilemmas, of course, from day-to-day basis, finance people, for compliance reasons also, they have to go through a lot of dilemmas. And those who are part of the professional bodies, they have standard codes of professionalism, codes of conduct. So various bodies use different terminology, but there is a whole list that we have to abide by that. So depending on that, one needs to understand what is their value, what is the organizational values, and if a person is basically misusing their position, for example, then you have to be very careful. Either the company has a whistleblowing policy that you can trigger, because let's assume that your own boss is doing something, or maybe is taking a bribe under the table, and you got to know about that. So if you are not very emotionally intelligent, you can mess up the whole situation for your own worse, and it will impact directly to you. So one needs to take care of the situation depending on considering the various aspects. Similarly, building a team of finance professionals who can also act as business partner rather than just report producers. So again, succession planning in finance it's an industry practice actually. One needs to train and coach their own team over a period of time, because one thing for the great leaders is that they have a plan, succession planning. They train their people, they mentor and coach their team members. So depending on the capacity and capability of each one of them, uh, which they have to understand first, and then they have to, prepare for their successor. So a little bit more detail about the self-awareness. So under the self-awareness, we can discuss on this spectrum, where in the emotional intelligence, uh, what should be the priority level of self-awareness. It can be from low to high, but self-awareness is of course high. If you are not able to understand what are the patterns that you are going through in your day-to-day affairs, and if you cannot highlight them, what is the trigger point, what makes you angry, what makes you mad, what causes you stress, what makes you fear something. If you are not able to decipher that, then uh, it becomes more difficult. So first thing is that one should be able to articulate what are the emotions that are arising on certain situations. So, and then if you are able to do that, you should write them down, journal, and you can take, of course, feedback depending on who is closer to you. Then self-assessment also, again, if you want to improve, you will continue to assess yourself on a continuous basis, and then only you will get better. So knowing yourself is one thing, and improving yourself is another, which comes with the feedback. So one has, or one should take feedback. Self-confidence on the priority level, I think it is between medium and high. I think self-confidence is very important. especially when you have to deal with clients, when you have to deal with the either partners or the stakeholders. Because if you are not confident about the things and you cannot articulate them properly, if you cannot convince, then half the battle is already lost. So the thing is that you have to be able to have that level of self-confidence to persuade people. So, again, the example that is given here is you need to speak up the, for example, tax risks that are there or the challenges that are there in order to influence the non-tax stakeholders. So you should be able to express assertively, not aggressively, assertively, and with evidence. Of course, in the finance world, we talk about more of the scenarios and figures and facts. So you can then assert those based on the case that you will build. Self-management, a very important area. uh, on the priority level, you can see most of them are, like your self-control, impulse control. I give you this previous example of, this amygdala hijack. So if you are able to manage yourself, you then can regulate your emotions and not take extreme measures. So there are a lot of times that the finance teams are under pressure. There are tight deadlines, that they have to fulfill. So the solution is that pause before responding. We also discussed about and gave the reference of Stephen Covey there. So pause before responding. If you have received an email from one of the clients, and maybe the client doesn't have that level of understanding, and maybe does not have that level of depth or analytical skills. So, you might get angry after receiving that email, but it's kind of your perception to it. So one needs to understand what is going on. That is more towards being empathetic, but still you need to regulate your emotion in that particular situation. So that will be helpful. That's why it is said that, if you have received a particular email or kind of information which makes you upset in a particular day, you do not respond or react to it within the same day. Give yourself like 24 hours before you write back, because a lot of the time it happens that, you change your position. The next thing is adaptability. A lot of changes happening in the market, so we need to make sure that, finance people are adaptable. We talked about this VUCA world that we are living into. So one has to show a very high level of adaptability. New regulation continue to come, so we have to on continuous basis, we should continue to learn, and we have to stay current on the law changes. Of course, it will take more of your time, and then you need to be flexible about it. And as knowledge workers, we need this is the bread and butter basically for the knowledge workers. They have to keep themselves updated so that, they can cater to the market requirements in a better fashion. And those who are able to do that, they basically climb up the ladder. There are other aspects of it, like initiative taking. Imagine a particular situation where one of your clients, they have certain issues. There is no public clarification from the FTA, let's say, on that aspect. Why not take a private clarification? This is part of the initiative taking side of it. So let's move on to the next slide. Social awareness, we talked about empathy. I think priority level is high or very high. And as finance people, we should try and interact with the other, for example, other department heads, depending on from one company to another. If you are working in a consultancy, then it's a different scenario. If you are working in industry wherein you are interacting with other business heads, it's a different scenario. But again, dealing with the people, understanding what their requirements are, and how you position your message or script your message is part of empathy. So as a precursor to it, one must be uh, listening very carefully. One must listen very carefully in order to understand the requirement. Because a lot of the time people feel that they have not been heard. It is true for the staff. And what basically separates a good leader from bad is that good leaders are also good in listening, and they understand what the requirements of the people are. So similar is true for the finance people. Whenever you are dealing with your clients, you must make sure that your client feels that they are heard, and you understand their requirement. You can do uh, you know uh, in the meeting, you can repeat the message or repeat the question, so that he understand that the person has received my message loud and clear, and he understands and is giving me the proper advice. Organizational awareness, where do you stand in a particular organization? That is also very important. So you know in various scenarios, it has different meanings. Every time there would be somebody who you will be reporting to. So uh, and how do you present your message to those people? It is very important. So from an organizational perspective, what are the power dynamics? One needs to have a very good understanding in practical time, in a practical way. And that's part of the wisdom also, where you understand how to go about those things. Then understanding of the cultural sensitivity and global awareness. Of course, those who are working in the GCC, especially in the UAE, you have to deal with various other nationalities, various other cultures. So that brings diversity also, but you have to be aware of uh, what is good in a specific culture. So you have to respect that also. The next thing is the relationship skills. This is the last aspect in the emotional intelligence. We talked about the communication. I think part of the communication is the ability to do storytelling. And those people who are very good communicators, communication is not that which is just coming out of your mouth. Communication basically, um, your body language is also part of the communication. Your eye contact, the way that you are sitting, all of these things, they communicate with the audience of how you are approaching certain things. So one should be clear. Depending on the audience, you should not be very technical. Imagine you are sitting with a CEO who is coming from a non-finance background. If you begin to use your technical jargon with that person, you will not be able to, you will not be able to communicate to him what you want to, because for him, he would not understand those terminologies. So first you then will start to explain the terminologies, and then it will maybe waste the executive time. So one needs to make sure that you are using neutral language and still be able to pass on the requirements, especially when it comes to performance management. So when you are dealing with the performance management, especially with the executive level, and you bring your ratio analysis and use some fancy terms, then again, you need to make sure that the KPIs are restricted and you only talk about them, but have a story in place so that they understand the overall picture. Because some of the time, these people, they have just very limited time, and which is why we have to pass on the most important things to them. Leadership, inspiring others. Uh, this is also something in emotional intelligence. This is very high. Like whenever you are in a leadership position, especially for the finance people, you have to work with integrity. There are certain value system. If you are part of a professional body, they'll make sure that, if you want to keep your membership active, from each year basis, you are signing off certain requirements, which is basically this objectivity, standards of professional conducts, basically. So one has to maintain that level of integrity. And when you are stressed out and deadlines are there, that's where you need to showcase, that you are still being respectful to your people. And only then you will be able to inspire, because anybody can become angry at any point in time, and use uh, wrong language, wrong terminology with the staff, and that will not be very good. for the staff morale, and then people would begin to do, you will lose your people. And in the earlier slide, we just talked about the succession planning. So if one is not able to navigate this or manage this properly, especially in terms of the relationships, then it's not a very good sign. And those people who are able to do it, they really grow. So, these are a few of the emotions that typically finance people go through because of the deadlines. There is a pressure situation, it creates anxiety. This is another emotion. Sometimes, because the requirements are not very clear, so it creates some confusion. There were so many, especially in the tax regime, so many clarification continue to come, and people were thinking, oh, is it going to continue like that? If certain aspects are not clear, what do you do? So one of the ways of approaching it, which we already discussed, is seek a private clarification. So similarly, there are so many other emotions. If we begin to list them down, it will take a lot of time. So as finance people, first thing is that be self-aware. Part of the self-awareness is that what triggers you and what are the emotions that in a daily basis you go through. If a stressful situation arises, how do you handle that? If a conflict arises, how do you handle that? So list them down, list all the patterns, and consider how you want to react or respond to it subsequently if you want to get better at it. So that is part of your self-management. So these are the various emotions that we go through. This imposter syndrome also, like no matter how much achievements you have done, still, you feel the void, like I'm not good enough, or I still need to prove something to my stakeholders or to the owners, or, like I might get exposed. The flip side of is, which people call it as narcissism. Again, heightened sense of self-importance, do a lot of drama, and degrading other people and considering your own self very important. So one should maintain the balance. One should understand both the emotional sides. So it is always important to maintain balance. So we overall covered the areas of the emotional intelligence. Now, I would like to present some of the tools basically which will help you do that. One of this is called Johari window. So on the right side, you can see, and you can do it on a piece of paper, you can do it in Excel if you want. What you need to do is that create this matrix. So first thing is that what you know of yourself and what others know of you. So this is called arena. Uh, and another thing is that what you don't know about yourself and others also don't know about yourself is unknown area. So these are the two extremes. The unknown is, of course, the future. Nobody knows about what's going to happen in future. Uh, like in 10 years' time, what you will be doing, because a lot of technological changes are coming. So you never know what you will be doing unless there is a certain pattern that you are following. So, so you divide you create this matrix and then you start working on it. There are certain aspects which are not known to to yourself, but they are known to the others. So what happens is that that is a blind area, basically. That's a blind spot. And one must seek feedback to develop or take care of your blind spots. And there are other things which are called facade, which is not known to the others, but known to yourself. It again depends what kind of information you want to share with other people and how much open you want to keep things. And from one person to another person, it will depend. But again, one tool to regulate your emotion is to draw this based on the other information that we discussed earlier. Uh, Combine this also. I think it's a very handy tool which can become helpful. And this is just an application, wherein in an open area, how do you establish credibility and trust? If you are not going to openly discuss the risks, or let's say the challenges that are being faced. If you do not communicate those with your stakeholders or shareholders, you will not be able to, firstly, they will not be able to understand the requirements, and then you will never be able to develop that level of trust and relationship with your stakeholders. So it is important, depending on the requirement, that you share those challenges. Blind areas for the finance leader unknowingly over relies on outdated KPIs. So, over a period of time, depending on how the industry evolves, one needs to ensure that, you seek outside information. Now, one of the things here, I would like to quote Jack Welch. He was the former CEO of General Electric. He said that if the rate of change inside an organization is less than the rate of change outside an organization, then the end is near. Now, this person is very much known in the business field for the extreme measures that he took for the business. He almost eliminated the middle management from their company, which is why he was called as Neutron Jack. So, what is the learning for the finance people? Finance people should interact with the other industry leaders, not only limited for a specific industry, but also they should explore with other industries, meet other finance professionals from other industries, interact with those people and understand. So, imagine if you are working in airline industry, and then you should interact with other people, maybe in hospitality industry, or somebody in the construction industry, so how their KPIs are done. So then you can take the best practices from one industry to another, and it might really help you. uh, in the essence of time, let's try and move to the next. I give you the gist of this slide. So, coaching can help, team building, conflict resolution. Johari window has all these strategic application, and one should try and take benefit out of them. Now, there is a saying, uh, name it to tame it. So this wheel is called Gento wheel. It is developed by, of course, this organization, Gento Institute. Now, what organizations do is that they try to print this for their employees, so that at any particular time, they understand what is the emotional frame of mind they are into. So, like you can also print something like this for yourself, and at any point in time, you can check. So based on the previous slide, this slide basically helps you to understand what are the various emotions. Primarily, there are 4 emotions. Of course, this organization gave us these 6 core emotions, and then others are extensions of those emotions. But overall, the psychologists, they agree on 4 emotions. One is, glad, mad, sad, and fear. The rest of them, they say, and there is predominant consensus on that rest are just the derivatives of it. So, keeping this handy with you, it helps you to understand what is the emotional frame of mind, and then you can name the emotion that you are going through. If, let's say, you are angry, then you tick mark that, and then say, okay, you name it that, yes, I am feeling angry. So the next step is that how you want to take action or response to it. Like, what is the necessary course of action you want to do it. So the first thing is to name it. Then comes what you are going to do about it. So we talked about it earlier. Now, beginning to these, almost the last slide, we these are the key takeaways. I would like to quote here Aristotle, who said that anyone can become angry, that is easy. But to be angry with the right person to the right degree at the right time for the right purpose and in the right way, this is not easy. Now, I would like to request you to please think about it, and also reflect on it a little deep. A lot of the time, we are getting angry on the wrong thing. We are just wasting our time. So this is a very profound statement from this Aristotle, and I want you to take this essence from this presentation today. Another quote I would like to present here is by William Ury. in his book, The Third Side, he says that every conflict is three-sided. And he says that the third side is the surrounding community. So a lot of the times, people think, in a particular conflict, there are just two people, A and B, husband and spouse, boss or the subordinate. But there are people who are in that community, in that surrounding, the wise people that who can approach. So this is a very interesting read. This author is basically an archaeologist, and he studied, like from a archaeological point of view. He's mediator. He's a known mediator from Harvard, and it's an interesting read. So the thing is that he builds on that case where one should invoke the third side to resolve the conflict. If you think that we are not able to take care of our own conflict, involve the community. Now, community is a subjective definition. Depending from one scenario to another, it will vary. And the last one is that no other success can compensate for failure in home. So this is a very important phrase, because one should start from self, then your family should benefit. You should be a cause of goodness for the society based on the values that you bring in. So the thing is that if your family themselves is not getting benefit out of that, imagine a scenario, and this has practically happened, that the father has earned millions and billions, and the kid is trying to kill the father. Why? Because there was no emotional bonding and relationship that was formed. The father was after running the money and creating that wealth. And who would know that, because didn't spend time with the family and the son would do something like that. So the thing is that no other success can compensate for failure in home. I would like to leave you with these references. These were the books that have helped me to prepare for this presentation. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
I think the topic was quite interesting and very useful considering current working environment. So
Thanks, Umair, for the session. I think quite intricate points and a lot of thought-provoking ideas you had given. Uh, Thank you very much. I'm sure a lot of people will refer this and got to absorb. I think asking a question may not be easy on this topic because it's more a self-reflection
Yes, sir.
than a Q&A. Thank you very much, Umair. Very, very interesting and amazing session.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving this opportunity to present to such a fine audience of especially the finance professional. I truly think that this is this area where we should expand our horizons more, and it will make us better human beings.